My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 298 of Legally Clueless. Thank you so much for being part of the family. If you are a newbie here, welcome. Audio episodes like this go out every single Monday. We have the midweek tease that goes out on Wednesdays, and then on Fridays, Ask a Therapist. If you're an OG member, you know I have nothing but love for you, and this is what's coming up a little later in this episode.
The next step was looking at your physical fitness and physical features. I don't know why they look for them. We still ask them. Well, some of them, they told us the reasons later on, they didn't make sense. But it's a way to, remove some wheat from chaff, in essence. So we passed that. The next was running. I ran. I was number 120. We went through the whole day. It was the whole day recruitment. The final exercise was a dictation. And by that time, our class around 200. And this is around 8 p.m. in the night. We came in at 5. This is around 8 p.m. when we were doing dictation. Again, a number was let go. Finally, we did health check. And again, a number let go. And finally, we were given what we call DIN numbers. The DIN number is the letter that allows you to get to Kigajo. That was 25th of November 2004. I became a police officer that day.
I am really excited for this particular story because I've always wanted to know what goes into becoming a police officer, just because I have serious issues on how they operate in this country of ours, Kenya, and honestly, in quite a few countries on the continent. But before we get to part one of Fredrick's story that's coming up, I have just come home from an incredible lunch date with my high school bestie, Nono. She's been on the podcast before, Nono Bukiti. She's from Botswana, but has been to Kenya for work quite a few times this year, which has been awesome for us to reconnect after so many years in person. And man, we always have such good quality conversations. We had after lunch, a heart-to-heart about friendship and about self-reflection and wanting to be better and wanting people around us to not only be self-aware, but like working towards a healthier version of themselves. And honestly, it was just incredible. I'm still like buzzing from it. I wish I had a microphone or just like hit record on my phone, but it was a beautiful, vulnerable moment for both of us. And it made me get inspired to do another friendship episode on our midweek teas for sure. Just because even personally, I'm in a different place when it comes to trying to make friends in my adulthood after shedding so many friends, after losing a very close friendship and what grieving that friendship has been like. We had an incredible conversation, and I want to be able to share a lot of this with you in the midweek teas. So I want your help in preparing for that friendship episode, which is like 10th friendship episode we've done. But anyway, I want your help to prepare for this friendship episode. So in the comments, please share specific lessons you've learned about making friends in adulthood. What are some things that made it easier? What are some insights? Please share them in the comments, or you can send them to us on Instagram on DM. And please include your name, because I'd like to not only add them to the episode, but I'd want to credit you as well. Because speaking to Nono, I just realized, oh my God, if I shared more about my experience trying to make friends in adulthood, grieving of long-term friendship that came to an end, I would have gotten insights sooner. And then there's you. We have conversations every week, and maybe you have insights. I'd love to hear them. Please drop them in the comments. Okay, let's jump into 100 African stories. I have always been very inquisitive about what goes into recruiting police officers, especially in Kenya, because that's where I'm from and that's where I stay. And I often wonder whether we have police officers who actually pursue the job so as to bring about change. And I question that. I'm like, are there people who see things happening in their community and are just like, I want to be a police officer so I can change ABCD? Enter Fredrick. Well, part one of his story, anyway, that centers around becoming a police officer and a lot more. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Fredrick Muitiriri. I was born and bred in Nakuru County here in Kenya. Grew up in a small village called Wanyororo. So I'm a complete villager, and I tell people that I came to Nairobi when I was all grown in 2007. So all my life I've not known any other place apart from Nakuru. Well, I was born in Molo. Molo is in Nakuru County. I shifted to Naivasha, a place called Dabibi, where I started school. That is nursery school. And then I started my primary school, the same school called the Dabibi Primary School. That is in Naivasha. And then in 1992, we moved to Nakuru. We are now in the same village, Wanyororo, where I schooled from class 2 all the way to class 8. I repeated class 7 to be precise, because I was a poor student. But I'll take you back. How we ended up in Nakuru. My mother is a teacher. So I'm born in a family of 4 boys. I'm the second born of my mother. My mother is a single parent. So I grew up all my life without a father. And I'll give you some of the things that African children go through. And children in general, when they're not raised by their fathers. Fathers are very important. I grew up all my life. I've known that village. I spoke Kikuyu all my life. So English is by chance. I stumbled upon English. All my life I spoke. I don't remember speaking Kiswahili or English anywhere in my schooling. Primary school, secondary school, because upon finishing primary school, we say in Kenya, I skipped the fence, went to the next school. It was a neighboring school to my primary school. Let me tell you about that school. So I was in a school called Mugwade Primary School. Mugwade Primary School came from Bavuni Primary School. Bavuni was a big school, but it had so many students, and so they needed 2 schools out of it. And so they had to make 2 schools out of it. And so there was Bavuni Primary School and Mugwade Primary School. Now I went to Bavuni Secondary School. Growing up, like every child in the village, I didn't know really what I wanted, and especially my formative years at the nursery school all the way class 4. We didn't know what we wanted. All we knew was a doctor, a pilot. Those are the things that we used to hear people wanted to be. But those were, I didn't want them. But around class 4, class 5, I started watching movies. I would go to a place called Marigoini to watch movies. And I grew an interest in football. And so I was playing football in class 4, class 5, class 6. I really loved football. And beyond just playing, I started listening to football commentary. And I remember by the time I'm hitting class 6, I had listened to so much radio, and especially those days, there was no other radio station except KBC. So there was KBC Kiswahili, KBC English service. And I was listening to a lot of Kiswahili radio service because that's what my mother was listening to, and my grandfather, in a sense. And I grew an interest in what those guys were doing. I love that football commentary, and I started imitating them. And so you'd hear me commentating even in school, just speaking like Ali Salimanga, Jacoyo Sylvester. Those were the big guys in my days. I would hear them and I would say, wow, I'd want to be like them. And one day, I was going to the market. My mother had sent me to a market. It's called Makutano. So I was going to the market. It's like a kilometer off. It was around 5 p.m. I remember very well. I was in class 6. And there's this lady called Mama Maina. She had me loudly commentating football, just imitating Jacoyo Sylvester, Ali Salimanga. And I remember her staring at me for close to 2 minutes. She looked at me, and I saw, we used to go to the same church. She looked at me, she smiled. And I wondered why she was smiling, because I was known as a cheeky boy growing up. And so she looked at me and she smiled. I smiled back. And this is what she said. I've never forgotten. Fred, she said in my mother tongue, Fred, you will be a great football commentator. That was it. I didn't know there's anything else I could do in this life apart from commentating. The interest grew. And now I didn't know what that was. I know it's football commentating, but I'm in the village. I didn't know it was journalism in essence. So I used to say, I want to work inside the radio. That's all I knew. I kept telling people, when I grow up, I want to get inside the radio and be like those people who are in that, who are commentating football. So my interest was just in football. And so I grow up, I still love football. By Form 2, FM stations have sprung, and in Nakuru County now we have more radios. We just don't have a KBC English service or Kiswahili service. Either we used to call it either. Then now there's Kiss 100, there's Nation FM, there's Citizen Radio, and I grew a love for Kiss 100. And I started listening to a lot of Kiss 100, and especially Form 1, Form 2. And I remember at one point, I would wake up at 5 to listen to Nyambane. I was in high school. I would love what he was doing. And so, by God's grace, now God was cementing that, radio journalism. So by Form 2, now I know better. I know those people who talk, they go to a school where they learn about media. That's all I knew. By the time I'm finishing Form 4, the word was mass media. That's what I wanted. I didn't know what it was. Now I'm in Form 2. I'm listening to a lot of Caroline Mutuko. She corrected me one time I met with her. And I'm listening to a lot of that radio, waking up early in the morning, listening to Nyambane 5 before. He used to do gospel. Nyambane used to do, from 5 to around 6, he would play gospel music and talk about God. This same Nyambane. And then at 6, Caroline would come on air. I would listen to them until around 6:30, go to school. I was in day school. I wanted to work with Kiss 100. I think that's the first time I started listening to anything English. Well, my love for English was also because my mother is a teacher. And so I used to pick her novels and I used to read them. There's Sidney Sheldon of this world. I started reading them when I was in class 6, class 7. And so in Form 2, I really want to work for radio. But at the same time, in Form 2, that is 2001, my mother bought a TV set. In the village, TV sets were for the rich. We were from... Teachers are not paid well. You are categorized as poor. But in the village, you were quite rich because, we had a TV set, black and white, and I remember it was a Calcom. The shell was Calcom, inside it was Samsung. So we bought a TV set, and I started seeing beyond radio, there's something else people do now on TV. I couldn't wait until 9 p.m. And so most of the time I would watch Kiswahili news, and that had an impact. Later on, I would learn that had an impact. And so I'm watching a lot of, because I'm watching while preparing supper. I used to cook because we are 4 boys, like I told you. My mother stopped cooking when we were in class 6, and she said, you guys, from now on, you are the chef in this home. So I started cooking when I was in class 40, blah, 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 blah. By class 6, I was cooking for everyone. So even in high school, I'm the one who is cooking for everyone. So I remember I used to I'm preparing supper, but at the same time, I'm watching news. There's a show that used to air around 6:30. I used to, then there was no electricity. And so we used to only watch TV between 6 and 10 p.m. because we used to use car battery those days. And so I would open the TV set at around 6, and there's a show called The Passion, the soap opera, and I'd watch it. And 7 p.m. I'd watch news. And after that, I would watch another soap opera, Days of Our Lives, those days at 9, at most, watch news for the first 15 minutes, go to sleep because the following day I'm in school. But sometimes I would still watch The Bold and the Beautiful. And so, again, I had something in me telling me, TV's, that guy, when they're reading news, it looks nice. And then it's Kiswahili. The Swale Mdoes of this world. Swale Mdoe is old. I used to watch him when I was in high school. And the likes of Ali Mtenzi those days, yeah. The likes of Kinakanze Dena. I think she was in KBC then. So many other names. Ann Gugi, and I remember Ann Gugi started reading news on KTN. That I remember very well. She was a reporter, and then one day I saw her reading news on KTN. And so I started thinking, I could do something on TV too. But see, I'm in the village and no one is telling us what careers we could follow. So I'm just telling myself, I could do that. What my mother did, and I think that was brilliant, every time would close school. If you're closing on Friday, Saturday at 10, I'll be in Molo at my grandfather's place. So the moment we close school, she would ship us to Molo. Every single holiday, April, August, November, December, would be at my grandfather's. And so in a way, my grandfather was quite a father figure because he never treated us like grandchildren. You see the way grandchildren are taken, grandparents take care of them, they did not want them to work. I was like one, and my brothers, in essence, we were like his children. And so he treated us just like his children. So I tend to think my grandfather played quite a role, and my mother was very intentional about it. I don't know if she knew then, but I think it was very important for us to, have my grandfather present in our lives. And not only that, my grandfather would show up anytime at our place, and he would stay for even weeks, and watch us and tell us what to do as men as we grew up. And so, in my uncle, he passed when I was in Form 2, also was very present. By and by, because he was like a big brother to us. Their mother, who is my grandmother, died when my uncle was 6 months, and my mother is firstborn. She was in class 7. And so my uncle was brought up in our home, in essence. And so, again, he was very tough on us, but he loved us very dearly. And so I tend to think my mother made sure that we had father figures around us in form of family. And I keep telling even young girls even today that, even when you have gone off and you got children, make sure that these children, and out of wedlock, make sure these children have someone they look up to as a father. So I tend to think I had my grandfather and my uncles as father figures, but also because you see, in a year I only have them like 4 months. Like my grandfather, I have him for 4 months, but the rest of the 8 months I'm with my mother. And so that has had an effect on me later on. Let me take you back to classics. I was one of those boys that in the village I was known as the bad boy. And so I'll steal my mother's maize, go sell and watch movies. And so around class 6, that is 1996, I repeated one class so that when people are doing mathematics, they're wondering, there is a year you are missing them. So in 1996, I'm in class 6, and I start watching movies. Class 5, class 6, I start watching movies. And I'm thinking, even what they're doing, I can do. And then my mother, she was a drama teacher, a Sunday school teacher, exposed me to drama. I started acting when I was in class 5. I remember very well, 1995. So I'm acting, I'm watching movies, and I'm thinking, I can also be an actor. And so I had 3 careers in me. So I'm acting in school, and I'm thinking on TV, those guys are acting, I can be an actor. Also, I used to watch military movies. And so I told myself, 3 careers in life I could follow. Military, to be a soldier, wanted to go to Hollywood to act, or a journalist. But I fell in love with journalism more because of listening to a lot of radios. Every Saturday you'd hear me asking for batteries to listen to radio, because then there was no electricity, and so you used to, batteries. Hey, wow, Everready. You remember those batteries? Everready batteries? And so I asked for batteries so that I could listen to football commentary. And so in Form 2, I'm thinking I could follow 3 careers. I have the soldier, I have the acting, and I have radio. But in Form 2, something was cemented. Because of listening to Kiss 100 a lot, I knew I would be very good at it. And so by the time I'm finishing Form 4 in 2003, I'm telling myself the only good thing I could do is radio, and I really want to do it. And so I finished Form 4. Like always, I'm in the village. I never passed. I failed terribly. I failed. When I tell people I failed, I failed. When you're going for your results, and they've been pinned on the board, and you can't start from the top, you're starting from the bottom. That's how bad it was. In a class of 200 students, I started looking for my name from the bottom. I couldn't start from the top. That's how bad it was. So I failed. I got a very strong C minus. I failed. In Kenya, when you get anything less than a grade that will take you to campus and you don't come from wealth, you have failed, because your parents, the chances are that they cannot take you to college. They cannot afford, and especially in the village, it's very difficult. Once you don't get university entry marks, it's very difficult for every child to, for many children, and especially here in Africa, to be taken to college. And so I got my C minus, and I started doing, call it kazi ya mjengo. And I left Nakuru, came to Nairobi. All this time I'm telling myself I'm looking for opportunities, colleges where I could study. I used to call it mass media, I told you. And I'm looking for opportunities, and I can't find anyone, any college that can pick students with a C minus. Everything I'm seeing, the minimum entry grade is C stud. And so for close to 8 months, I'm trying to look for opportunities to go to any college. And there is none. until around September, when Mombasa Polytechnic, and I used to go to Nakuru town every Friday to read a newspaper, to see opportunities and colleges and universities where I could apply. And my mother was telling me, look for one, look for one. And so in September of 2004, after working, by that time I've worked in a number of places. I did construction, kazi ya mjengo. I sold softer soda in Juja. I'm the only person who is tilling our land at home. All that time, I'm really working hard. Let me take you just a step back. In 2003, after I cleared high school, I got born again. And that was very important for me because it gave me focus. Because all through, I told you I was a bad boy. All through, people used to tell me, you will end up in prison. Everyone knew I would end up in prison. I was that bad. I was so bad such that the last day of our examination, I stole all the bulbs. And they were not just bulbs. I took everything, even the mounting, took everything and sold at 800 shillings in 2004. You know how much that was? Yes, and there were special lamps that, because we didn't have electricity in our school, they were placed there so that us Form 4s could study. I stole all of them. I was that bad. And so in 2003, around December 28, I gave my life to Christ. And that had a very good impact on me because now it gave me focus. And so even when I'm looking for opportunities and I'm only getting opportunities for assistant, I'm praying to God, just give me one institution that I'll get with a C minus. I never got until way in September when I got this Mombasa Polytechnic. They were looking for students who could study Module 1, and I remember very well, Module 1 and Module 2. Those were not even certificates. They were lesser than certificates. You do Module 1, Module 2, so that you do a certificate. That's how bad it was. And then I could do a diploma and progress. So how much were they requiring me for school fees? 49,000 shillings. And that is in Mombasa Polytechnic. I think right now it's called Pwani University. And I went to my mom and I told her, I've found finally, after all those months of searching, I have found one institution. She asked me, how much are they charging? 49,000 shillings. I saw her resignation and I knew, amen. And she told me, clearly, your big brother is not going to college. He was still at home. He was working somewhere in Georgia, but he had not, gone to college. And I had two brothers behind me who were in boarding schools. One was in a primary boarding school. The other was in a secondary, provincial. Those days, it was provincial, Kwele High School. It was in boarding school. And my mother told me, it's almost impossible. And so I gathered my thoughts and I told myself, if my brother is not going to college, actually, I think two of my brothers were then in primary boarding school, both of them, Naivasha boys. But I gathered and I told myself that I think that was the third born was in class 7 or class 8 or thereabout. Cleared in 207. So I think, I think he's in Form 1 or Form 2, thereabout. But I told myself that would take me around 6 years for my mom to take me to college. If all these kids are supposed to finish so that I can be taken to college. And I told God to give me a job, any job, and I'll pay for myself the Module 1, Module 2. I told myself, it is in Mombasa Poly. I'm going to study it. Because I couldn't find any college to study journalism. And so I told God, just give me any job. Any job. I'll save, take myself to school. What did come my way? Police. That is how I joined Kenya Police. So this is what happened. So all this time, because I'm telling my mom, I want a job. Hata kama ni ya polisi. I just want a job so that I can pay for myself. And so we told an uncle of mine who was a senior police officer, and he could access newspapers. He used to be given newspapers every day. Told him, if he hears of recruitment, he should tell us. Well, he never told us. He told us, I think that time he was in Turkana and he couldn't access the newspaper. He didn't know there was a recruitment. He was a police officer. My uncle, my bro's mom, my mom's bro, came home one evening. You see, by that time, mobile phones are with the rich. So we don't have mobile phones. And so he came home and he came all the way from Molo. We were in a crew and he told us, there is a police recruitment tomorrow. We asked, I remember myself and my mom, we asking ourselves, What do you mean there's a police recruitment and we don't know about it? I was shocked, but I told him we are going for that police recruitment. And so he woke up at 4 in the morning, caught a matatu, went to police recruitment by 5. By 5:20, we were at a place called Dog Unit in Nakuru. That's where the recruitment was taking place. And one of the reasons, a few months to me going for this recruitment, I remember hearing in news of a young girl who had just cleared high school, Form 4. She had got A, clean A. She was working at a supermarket in Nakuru town. And on her way home, she was raped and killed. That gutted me. I remember telling myself, I need to stop such. And there's no way I can do that except I report it or I investigate. And so I have this drive to also, serve justice to such people. I remember she was from Bahati. I remember that case so well. I felt so bad. And why was she killed? Because she was raped by, I think, 5 young men from the same village, by the way. They were from the same village. And I remember how they were all caught. One of them, the girl knew who this person was. And so she called him by the name. That's the guy who killed her. And so these guys, all of them, he was the last guy to rape her. All of them, when they were asked what happened, they say, Kwani she was killed. Kwani he killed her. That is how they were all caught. And I remember telling myself, I need to stop. I wish I could be a police officer. And so days going to this, I really wanted that job. So beyond just wanting to pay my own school fees, I had a drive to serve justice. I think in me, I've always wanted justice for people. Sometimes I think I should be in the space where I'm looking for justice for people. I feel so. And so I got to this recruitment at 5 in the morning. And I remember running. The first thing that we did, we got there, we were 4,600 people. How many people did they need? 46. 1%. I remember we were told months later when I was in Kiganjo, we were 4,600 and they needed 46 people. 46 only. And I remember when we got there, it was like, have you ever seen political rallies? We thought it was a political rally at 5:20 in the morning. And I remember telling me and my uncle saying, we're almost the same age, saying, my goodness, are we going to make it here? He told me, we will make it. We will make it. I used to be in scouts. And so we told ourselves, I was playing taekwondo by that time. And I used to run. I told my staff, we shall make it. And so we got in there, and the first thing that you do in recruitment is that you give out your certificates or result slip. I had my result slip. Did I have? Yes, I had my result slip. You had your birth certificate. They ask for them. They look for papers. The first thing they do is papers. And so we got in. That's the first place. So many people. So they're looking for people with certain grades. So the grade was between D plus all the way, because I remember some graduates were picked even that time. And so that's the first thing. So it's a lot of people again who had some grades were let to go. Some people who didn't have that D plus were let to go. Some people who had B. So they didn't pick B guys, they were picking graduates. So if you're a graduate, you had a chance. But if you had beyond C plus, beyond B, they were not picking you. And so a number of guys left. So we were left with a significant number. And so the next step was looking at your physical fitness and physical features. I don't know why they look for them. We still ask them. Well, some of them, they told us the reasons later on, they didn't make sense. But it's a way to, remove some wheat from chaff, in essence. So we passed that. The next was running. I ran. I was number 120. I think it was number 120. 120. I think 120 was 60. But again, we were such a big number also. I mean, I come from Nakuru where Kales are there. My goodness, those guys. By the time you're finishing, we were running 12 laps. By the time you're finishing 12 laps, these guys, they are rested. So I think by that time we were around 1,000 or 2,000. We went through the whole day. It was the whole day recruitment. And so I remember the final exercise was a dictation. And by that time, we were class around 200, and we were around 200. And this is around 8 p.m. in the night. We came in at 5. This is around 8 p.m. when we were doing dictation. And so we did dictation, and I remember I had a friend of mine called Simon Agashoro. By that time, I couldn't do the dictation. We were doing in capital letters. So because police officers write their reports in capital letters because of legibility. Yeah. So their reports, you'll see most of their reports when they're writing reports, they write in capital letters most of the time. Those days, I don't know if they still do it. And even in our news writing, we write in capital letters. And so, again, a number was let go. Finally, we did health check. And again, a number let go. And finally, we were given what we call DIN numbers. The DIN number is the letter that allows you to get to Kiganjo. That was 25th of November 2004. I became a police officer that day. I think a majority of people who leave Kiganjo are people who never went through the recruitment, are people who corrupted their way in. Yep. Why? Because in 2004, our year, I can say this with a lot of confidence, I think 99% of the people who got in never bribed, and therefore no one left. During our time, not even a single recruit left. Why did we get a clean slate in that year? And I'll tell you, a lot of we call them detailmates, people we left Kiganjo with, have left the police, a good number. They've left the police force. Why? Because you went there on your own volition. No one paid any dime for you to get in. Before our recruitment, 2 weeks before our recruitment, there was another recruitment from KWS, and their training is Manyani in Mombasa. And there was so much corruption that the new president then, Mwai Kibaki, dismissed all of them 2 weeks before our recruitment. And so the light was being shown on us. There was massive corruption during the KWS recruitment, and all of them were told to go back home. They had already reported in Manyani. They were told, all of them, go back home. And they had to do another recruitment. And then 2 weeks later came police recruitment. That was the best thing that ever happened to us, because no one could dare bribe. And no police officer would want to find themselves on that spot. And so all of us, and I remember us in Nakuru, we remember the 46 of us, we knew each other, even in Kiganjo. We knew it was clean slate. You came in because you qualified. And so a majority of the people that we went to Kiganjo with, a majority of them, maybe very few, came that way. And so you knew you really did this job. So all of us, we knew this is it for us. It's a new government, because we were picked in 2004. Kibaki came to power in 2002. So he's 2 years in. The economy is growing. And we knew there was a future. And Kibaki was very strict in matters. He never fought corruption, like fighting corruption, but he detested it. And so we had a very good time. So in Kiganjo, every day you were asked, every single morning for the first 3 months, who wants to go home? No one would raise their hand. Why? Because even them, they have people they would want to bring on board. Because that's a spot for you, that the government is paying for that spot. Because training one police officer, then we were told, is 600,000. Every day they would ask us, Urutu, nani nataka kwenda nyumbani? Early in the morning, who wants to go home? And no one ever raised their hand, not even a single person. For the 9 months we were there, they stopped asking us at around the 6th month. And I'm telling you, the first month, it's a hell of a place. I'm telling you, it's a hell of a place. My God. We joined on 17th of December 2004. And I remember I got there at around 2 p.m. We finished with the process of recruitment, of entry. We were given our barrack. I used to be in a barrack called Kericho at 1 a.m. So we've been given your barrack, so that those will be your squad mates. I was in squad 8 of 2004, and we were in the same barrack as squad 7. At 1 a.m., we were woken up. This is the following day, 1 a.m. We ran around the college. It's a huge field. From 1 a.m. to 5 in the morning, we were running. And we all have Raya clothes. They didn't have uniform. You've not been allocated uniform. We are running like cockroaches. You are running and they're beating you. They're telling you to run. Yeah. You can't be walking and you have come for recruitment. The first month, We were like AYM of that institute. There was no other training. The training was trying to get us out of that college. There was no police training as such. The training was trying to take raya out of you, a civilian, to being a cop. It's a process, and you have to start thinking like a cop, stop thinking like a civilian. It's a process, a whole month. We would work from 1 a.m. to 4 p.m., working, like literally working. And you couldn't sit down and you couldn't stop working for a whole month. Kiganjo is humongous. Kiganjo is huge. And so it had taken them a whole year. There was no one in that institute. So you can imagine the kind of grass that was there. It was knee-sized grass. In some places, shrubs were everywhere. So it's cleaning up that place. And it's tens of kilometers of acres. Tilling land. We had land around, I think, 10 acres. We are tilling land. So some groups would go to tilling land. Others will go clean their quarters, instructors' quarters. Others will go to the main fields. We had how many fields? We had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 fields. The work, others will be, making sure that the institute is clean. So you're washing every day. You'd wash, and it's buildings after buildings, 5 floors, and you're supposed to wash all of it. I hated it. I really hated it. That first month was the worst, because you were doing all this after running for 5 hours. You woke up to run. You woke up at 1 a.m. You've been running all the way to 5 in the morning. You released to go take tea. At 6, you're in parade, main parade. You'll do drills until 8 in the morning. You're being trained how to do drills without the discipline of police. And then from there, you start working. You'd work until 12:30. You go for lunch. 1:30, you're back in the field. You'd work and you cannot stand, and you cannot stand, you cannot sit down. By the time you're done, you're eating 2 breads. Like, it's normal. There was a bread, I remember, called Ken Blessed. You used to eat it. You'd eat two full loaf of bread, and you're okay. And you'll go take supper. That's how much work we were doing.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. Okay, first and foremost, Fredrick is such a brilliant storyteller. I am so locked into this story. Like, even personally, I want to give you part 2 now, But part 2 is going to be out next week. So make sure Monday you're here nice and early to listen to part 2 of Fredrick's story. The other thing, when he was talking about his experience after being recruited into the police force, is the recruitment process and also the training process. It feels pretty colonial to me. It feels like it centers on instilling fear. It thinks it's instilling discipline, but I don't know if it is. I don't know if treating people like that, like, where are we running at I don't know what hours of the morning, but I don't know what value that brings. I could be wrong, because obviously that's an industry I don't have much knowledge on, but I wonder what it helps, right? I wonder if that training process is relevant for the context of the communities that the police serve now. Maybe it was relative during colonialism for whatever the goal was then. And yeah, maybe unfortunately it was relevant then. I say unfortunately because it was probably not right. But I wonder if it's relevant now. And maybe we're the ones thinking that the goal of the police is to protect us, and maybe government has another goal. You know what I mean? I also wonder, when it comes to that training, if it is relevant for the type of criminals we have now. So, like, how does this help the ever evolving industry of criminal activities, And I also wonder, this training process, does it help the mental state of these police officers? Are we shocked then that many of them seem so angry? And yeah, like, the first point of contact for the policeman is they try to instill fear in you, the community they serve, even when you're not a criminal, you know? I always say there are countries I go to and I can ask the policeman for directions if I get lost. In my own country, I would rather not because I know I'm just opening up Pandora's box. So, yeah, the training, anyway, I don't know if you have thoughts on what Fredrick shared in terms of what happens during the training process, but I'd love to hear them. So drop them in the comment section. And yeah, I can't wait for next week. Part 2 of Frederick's story will be right here on this podcast. Speaking of stories, if you want to share your story, in the show notes, there is a storyteller form. Fill it out, and our correspondent will get back to you. If you're in the greater East African region, catch us on Trace FM or Trace Radio Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m. Fridays, we're there at 1 p.m. And just go to traceradio.co.ke to stream. If you enjoyed this episode, drop us a comment, give us 5 stars, and don't forget to share it with your people. Ooh, and another thing, make sure you join our TikTok family and Instagram family. We're at Legally Clueless Africa. Links to those are in the show notes. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.
I'm Lupita Nyong'o. My new podcast, Mind Your Own, is a storytelling show that navigates what it means to belong, all from the African perspective. We're going beyond the headlines to dive into nuanced, intimate stories from Africans around the world. I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Listen to Mind Your Own on Apple Music.